What is the definition of a guilty pleasure? Well, a guilty pleasure is an activity or piece of media that someone enjoys but would rather be embarrassed by if other people found out about it. These might be books, movies, TV shows, foods, etc. Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video here on the channel. Today, I'm going to be checking out your guilty pleasure movies. Obviously, I posted that little community tab post. You guys commented on that, and I'm going to be going through some of those comments. Now, the beautiful thing about guilty pleasure movies is there's no right or wrong. There are some interesting ones in amongst the bunch. There are some ones that are quite obvious, but some that are just so obscure, but also ones that I totally agree with. Again, there's no right or wrong, and in the words of Chief Wiggum,
I say if it feels good, do it.
All right.
Don't snap my undies.
so before I get to reacting to your comments, I've got like 20 odd of them to react to, so it's going to be a ripper of a video, so buckle the fuck up. I actually want to go through some of my guilty pleasure movies, and there are actually some of mine that marry up with yours, which is great. So right off the bat, I have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, even though that's an arcade game. But to me, I think this is just nostalgic love goggles from when I was a kid, especially given the fact that the turtles now look like frogs for that matter with the animatronics, and it's just a very lame premise going back in time. But at the same time, I love this film because it was my childhood. Obviously, TMNT 1990, the first one, stands on its own because it was so dark and gritty, and then we got to Secret of the Ooze, and then it became a bit more fluffy and a bit more lighthearted. And TMNT 3, they just went all out and just like kind of deconstructed and self-destructed. Next up is Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. Obviously, it's one of those things where it's not a love-hate relationship, it's just love, and you love it warts and all. I love the Twin Peak elements. I love the not so great makeup on Robert Englund. That's why I made a bust out of it. Even though it's not the greatest, I still love it. And I just love the comparison of Part 1 Freddy to Freddy's Dead Freddy. Like, we've come so far and just so far removed from what Freddy started out in 1984. Next up, and I wouldn't say it's like an awful film, but it's just a fun one that kind of just gets buried in obscurity. No one really talks about it. And that's Beer Fest by the Broken Lizard crew. I adore this film. I actually love this film more than Super Troopers, which is a super unpopular opinion. But I just love how goofy and just jolly it is when the boys go to Beer Fest and then they compete in the Beer Fest competition. It's great, it's stupid, it's that typical slapstick Broken Lizard, crude, unorthodox humor. And I love it. I have it on repeat a lot of times. It's in my Blu-ray collection. It was one of the earliest Blu-rays I bought back in the day. I just have a very soft spot for it. Next up, and this is a few of you guys, Spawn from 1997. I think this film is definitely way ahead of its time. It does cop a lot of shit, but you've got to admit the practical effects, the costumes, the makeup on Michael Jai White and John Leguizamo were amazing. CGI, not so good. And it's interesting given the fact that the director was a former employee of ILM, as well as the VFX artist, the head VFX artist. I think his name was Spaz Williams, and that's what they named the dog after in Spawn. And they obviously went back, did a ton of reshoots, and like Michael Jai White said, it was so far removed from what the original film was. Like, it was more of like that intimate love story between Al Simmons and Wanda, and then when he does become the Hellspawn, it's a lot more brutal, but it just became a mess of bad CGI, but I still love it. Like, it could have been so good. Tried its best, but at the same time, it's a guilty pleasure for me. Coming in next, we've got Little Nicky. People dump on this movie a lot, but I think it's got so many fun elements in it, like some great makeup as well. I love Sandler's performance in this. I love everyone's performance in this film. It's so wacky, it's so fucking stupid, and it's just peppered with some amazing cameos, a banger of a soundtrack that got me into POD as well, which I just love when a movie has an even better soundtrack. There are a lot of movies out there that are so shit, but the soundtracks are absolute banger. But I just think it's just a fun romp of a time. And it's obviously Adam Sandler's crew doing their thing, but they're all in different obscure roles. Next up, and this is a god-awful one, but holy shit, it's so cheesy and so bad. It's good and just a very big guilty pleasure of mine. Three Ninjas High Noon at Mega Mountain, featuring the Hulkster and Lonnie Anderson. And the premise is Lonnie Anderson and her crew, along with Jim Varney, the late great Jim Varney, take over a theme park called Mega Mountain. Then it's up to Rocky, Colt, and Tum Tum to stop them. And it's just, again, so far removed from what the original one was. The original Three Ninjas, then we had Kick Back and Knuckle Up, or was it Knuckle Up and Kick Back? It's one of those things where one was filmed and then it was shelved for a bit, then they filmed another one and then it came out later. It's a weird one. You'll have to read into it. Even though the first three Ninjas aren't great, like they're not the greatest, but I still love them. And a lot of 90s kids, a lot of 80s and 90s kids that grew up in that era have a soft spot for them. I think it was also at a time when Home Alone and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was massive. And then you have kids your age, back then when you're that age, who are kicking ass and beating up bad guys that are fully grown adults. And last, but certainly not least, one of my guilty pleasure movies. Again, this is in no real order, but just a handful before we get going to reacting to your comments, is Batman and Robin. The ice puns, the nipples, the rubber asses, the god-awful dialogue. It's just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And again, probably nostalgia goggles, but I definitely do have a soft spot for this one. It's also one of the reasons why I wanted to get into costuming, seeing those brilliant costumes up on screen. Nipples and all, they are beautiful pieces of costuming technology. You've got Arnie throwing ice puns everywhere. You got Uma being a very weird interpretation of Poison Ivy that's very poetic. You've got a Bane that isn't Bane and just like a circus monster. And it's Joel Schumacher just going, pun intended, absolutely batshit crazy. So with that being said, we've got 20 odd guilty pleasure reaction comments here to go through, so let's get straight into it. And the first one right off the bat, and a good little conversation started with my guilty pleasure movies. Isaac Ferrero says, Little Nicky, music always makes me come back. And I even replied to that one because I was like, hell yeah, man, that banger of a soundtrack is great. Not only do we have POD, we've also got Akadaka, you've also got Ozzy Osbourne, but again, just like the makeup design, we've got Tithead, the gatekeeper from hell. It's just, we've even got Rodney Dangerfield in there at one point making a cameo. Harvey Keitel as the devil. It's just the most wackiest thing ever. On paper, or seeing all this written out, the cast, the crew, who they're playing, what the makeup designs are going to look like, you'd be like, this is going to be a wild ride. It definitely is. Redbeard18 says, Van Helsing, Hugh Jackman, Kate Beckinsale, and Richard Roxenberg's over-the-top Dracula. Great werewolf designs with fun lore and non-stop excellent action. What's not to love? So, bit of a confession here, I actually haven't seen Van Helsing in its entirety. I remember when it was coming up, when it was gearing up to come out, and thought, this looks awesome, Jackman looks awesome, and I actually hear a lot of people say it's actually pretty good, you should give it a chance. So I wouldn't even categorize it as a guilty pleasure from all the reactions I'm hearing about it. So again, I'm very late to the game and I definitely do need to see it, man, but it does look like it has a lot of good elements going for it. Even just judging it from the poster and the trailer and the photos that I've seen. And Jackman in a trench coat with long, glorious hair? Fuck yeah. Parking Lot 77 says Step Brothers is truly a masterpiece. Doesn't matter how I feel or how many times I've watched it, you'll always give me many good laughs. I couldn't agree more, man. I fucking love Step Brothers. Did you touch my drum set? It's so quotable. My mates and I still quote to this day. I was even at the pub last night and my mate Pete said a shit joke. And I was like, shut the fuck up. You know that sequence with John C. Reilly? He's like, what if Nancy comes up to me and she starts thinking, I've had the old bull, now I want the young calf. And the dad's like, shut the fuck up.
Grabs me by the wings. Shut the fuck up.
I love all that shit, man. And I was late to the game watching that as well. And then it was one of the first Blu-rays that I ever bought. And I just had that shit on replay. Duxterman says Batman Forever. It's cheesy and all over the place, but I grew up watching anything Batman. Laughed my ass off. Yeah, Batman Forever was definitely like that halfway point between Burton's Batman and then ultimately what we got in Batman and Robin. It was still teetering on the dark gothic elements, going into Bruce's psyche, the psychology of Bruce Wayne, how it's affected him with his parents' murder into adulthood. And I definitely want to see the Schumacher cut, if it does exist, if it is going to happen. Apparently Kevin Smith has seen it, and it does delve a lot more into the psyche of Batman. So I think obviously it had a lot of studio interference, but man, those were the fucking days. Back in 95 and 97, I think I was in, I'm trying to do my math, carry the one. I was in year 2 and then year 3 or 4 when Schumacher's Batmans came out. And it was a great time to be alive, man. Like, I was a sucker for the merchandise, as a lot of kids were. And those films, especially Batman and Robin, were a product of being the toyetic thing where the toys came first, movie took a back seat. Harrison921 says, Hi Chris, most people aren't a fan of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but I just can't help but love it. It may not have the greatest story, but Andrew is my favorite Spider-Man. It has the best Spider-Man suit and the best Spider-Man swinging scenes, thanks to the cinematography and great CGI. it does have a lot of good going for it, man. I still remember seeing it and thinking, that is a very, very busy film. Like, it's a clusterfuck of a film with a lot of characters and just a very, like, Spider-Man 3 feel to it. But at the same time, I'm glad Andrew Garfield got his redemption in No Way Home, and I think I did give him a bit of shit back in the day when the second film came out. But the swinging scenes, I totally agree. That establishing shot from his back, and it pans out and he's free falling, and you see the wind like fluttering under the suit, and I'm like, man, that looks like, that's fucking realistic as. And like, I like the Hobgoblin. I thought it was an interesting design. It was a freaky design at that. And what's his name? Dane DeHaan, that plays Harry. He's a creepy bloke. Like, he plays a creepy Harry Osborn. So I definitely see where you're coming from, man. Like, it isn't a perfect movie, but does have a lot of good going for it. Azreal725 says, The Phantom. It's just a damn good time. Billy Zane's charisma and charm is off the charts. Treat Williams, rest in peace, chewing the scenery. Yeah, man, absolutely. Catherine Zeta-Jones and Christy Swanson are beautiful and fun. I agree. The ending gets a little goofy with the laser beam battle, but overall super fun movie. Yeah, I agree, man. When Xander Drax has the skulls and he's leaning forward and Billy Zane trying to like, I don't know why I did an Arnie impression of him as the Phantom, but there you go. But yeah, Billy Zane, I think that was perfect casting. And the fact that he didn't want a muscle suit, he didn't wear a muscle suit in that costume, and he just got absolutely jacked over the span of a year. I actually saw him at a Supernova Con in Adelaide in 2019, and I had this beautiful Phantom lobby card signed by him, and he was so cool. And I had an original script by Leslie Bohm, I think. I don't know if it was Leslie Bohm. It was the original script, but essentially before they went in and made changes, and it became the script that we see what happens up on screen. And I showed it to him. He's like, oh my god, I haven't seen this in ages. I remember all this. It's all coming back from the first table read before they did the rewrites. Can I take a photo? I'm like, yeah, go for it. And when he was taking photos, I'm like, man, I gotta say, props to you for like hitting the gym, getting jacked, and not wearing a muscle suit. And he's like, man, when you're playing the king of the jungle, you have to commit and go all out. And I'm like, yes, sir. But yeah, just that adventure serial aspect, they nailed. Like, it's that goofy, swashbuckling,
hello on today's adventure.
It's great. It's fucking perfect. And the suit as well. The suit's a great interpretation and a realistic approach to the Phantom costume, as opposed to putting striped undies on the outside of the suit. And yeah, Treat Williams as Xander Drax, he scared the shit out of me. I was in year 2 when the film came out, and Dad took me to see it, and that scene with the microscope and the blades and the guy looks through it, I remember I started crying in the cinema. It was last week. Well, don't worry about it then. Just don't respond. Collect to disconnect. Pineapple Express, I can quote the entire movie, followed by Scarface and Cradle to the Grave with Jet Li and DMX. Holy shit, man. You just unlocked a memory. Cradle to the Grave. I remember that because that was around the same time as like Exit Wounds with Steve Seagal. Fucking Steve Seagal. Yeah, Cradle to the Grave. I only saw that once, but I loved it because it was back then where it was those types of movies, and Jet Li was in everything, and they were capitalizing on Jet Li's popularity from the one, and then, or before that, he was in Lethal Weapon 4. Pineapple Express, I love Pineapple Express, man. I actually still need to go back and rewatch that, because it's been a hot minute since I'd seen that. But like Step Brothers, I was obsessed with Pineapple Express and Superbad, and I had those three on rotation on Blu-ray a lot back in the day. Roland Wagner 1343 says Ninja Turtles Secret of the Ooze because they have 3 iconic characters, Tokka, Raza, and the Super Shredder. Basically my endgame when it comes to comic book movies. Yeah, like I said at the beginning, like when I said TMNT 3 is a massive guilty pleasure for me. I think TMNT 2 still definitely holds up, but like I said, it's very fluffy compared to the first because a lot of parents complained. But Tokka and Raza, I was obsessed with them back in the day. The designs and everything. There was a reason why they didn't go with Bebop and Rocksteady. I believe Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird were like, we don't want Bebop and Rocksteady for some reason. Let's make 2 original characters. And then the Super Shredder, even though it's a couple of minutes you see the Super Shredder, played by wrestler Kevin Nash, and he's just fucking huge in that, but he just ends up killing himself when he rips the dock apart and it all falls on him. It is kind of lame how the Turtles don't really use their weapons, and Mikey's using bloody cold cuts, and Leo just throws his swords in the ceiling, and Donnie's using a wiffle ball bat, I think? Dan the Bat Fan says Batman and Robin with its ice and plant puns. Alright everyone, chill, let me guess. Plant girl? Vine lady? Huh? Yeah, man, totally agree. Like I said at the beginning, Batman and Robin is one of my guilty pleasure movies. Again, it's a great movie to get some Uber Eats, get the drinks flowing, sit your mates down, and just roast the movie. And I did that a few years ago. 3 of my best mates hadn't watched it before. I'm like, all right, boys, we're going to order some curry, we're going to get some drinks, and you're going to watch Batman and Robin. And we've never laughed so hard in our lives. And I did the same with them with Samurai Cop. Brilliant. It's so beautiful having someone next to you that's never seen something before that you know they're gonna have a good time with, and you do the thing where you look over and watch their reaction and you're like, this is what it's all about. T Clark 6989 says, Super Mario Brothers. I don't know whose idea it was to turn the Mario franchise into Blade Runner for children, but I love it. That is a good way to look at it. It is Blade Runner for children, 100%. I was obsessed with that movie back in the day because it was like gritty, realistic, and badass. I think the casting of Bob Hoskins as Mario was genius. Like, Bob Hoskins, rest in peace, was a brilliant actor, and he was perfect as Mario. John Leguizamo as Luigi, yeah, I got behind it as well. Like, even when I was a kid and even now, I thought it was pretty decent casting. I love the behind the scenes stories about that movie. It's more of a spectacle behind the scenes than the actual movie. Apparently, Leguizamo and Hoskins were just drunk the entire time because it kind of eased the pain for them to get through how hard filming was. You had a husband and wife director that were inexperienced and just absolute micromanaging and taskmasters. Dennis Hopper as well as King Koopa, just so much silliness. Like, so much was changed as well. But at the same time, that's spot on, man. Blade Runner for children. Chicken in a Graveyard, it's a great name, says Jingle All the Way. Whoever thought of casting Arnold was an absolute genius. And it's turbo time, need I say more. He got 2! I actually watched Jingle All the Way last Christmas. Chloe hadn't watched it before and we watched it. She was pissing herself laughing. It's so inappropriate now, but I love when Arnie goes into Jake Lloyd's room, Jamie's room, and he's got the bandana from karate, and he's like, Jamie, is this it? This is really cool. And he's like, oh, Arnold, what are you doing? But like the dodgy Santa Claus is one of them, played by Jim Belushi, I think it is, and they got the counterfeit Turbo Man, and just the Santa with the nunchucks, and it's just fucking stupid, man. So that and Home Alone 1 and 2, Christmas Vacation, those are my usual go-to Christmas movies. So yeah, Jingle All the Way is awesome, man. Good choice. Mark Corin 7 says the Matrix sequels, especially Reloaded. I agree. Reloaded was like that middle point of, oh, here we go into not so good territory when it came to Revolutions, in my opinion. But when I saw the first Matrix, I was a little bit younger, so I didn't really understand the philosophical points, the certain tones of the movie, the religious tones and stuff like that, and Neo being compared to the Messiah, being the one and all that. But obviously over time, since I've grown up, I've appreciated it a lot more. But I love the visuals as well. Like Little Me, back in the day when I first saw the film, bullet time, all that, fights, trench coats, sunglasses, machine guns. I'm like, yeah, that's badass, man. But when it came to Reloaded, I was a bit older because that was 2003 when those two came out, when Reloaded and Revolutions came out. The Burly Brawl, man. The Burly Brawl was badass. The Chateau fight. Was it Rob Duggan, who did the soundtrack, man? I always had those tracks on repeat. Burly Brawl and the Chateau. Absolutely loved it. And I love that they upgrade, well, I wouldn't call it upgrade, but they changed Keanu's costume from obviously the trench coat, the gun holsters, to that beautiful button-up coat, and it's all majestic when he swings in the Burly Brawl and he's got the pipe and everything. And the highway chase, man, like the behind the scenes of that. And that was another thing. I had to put my coffee down because I'm about to try and make a point. I get really passionate about this shit. The special features on Reloaded, the first Matrix, and Revolutions were when special features were fucking awesome and sometimes better than the actual film. So like when they did a featurette on the Burly Brawl, the Chateau fight, and then the highway chase, and how they built like a mile and a bit of highway on the outskirts of LA, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but they built an actual fucking highway for these talented stunt performers to do all these tricks with motorbikes and cars and flips, and yeah, it was badass, man. And I love that shot of Lawrence Fishburne on top of the truck with the samurai sword. And he's like, Neo, I could really use your help. And he just looks so good with that trench coat, the sword, and Fishburne's just so cool, man. This is a really good one. Breezy Tears 7382. The Crow City of Angels is a film that I wholeheartedly believe is underrated, underappreciated, and overhated. The visuals and soundtrack are stellar, and in my opinion, on par with the first Crow. Well, I wouldn't agree with that it's on par with the first Crow. I think it's a severely misunderstood film. And if you go to the YouTube channel Good Bad Flicks, he does incredible work. He did a deep dive into The Crow City of Angels, and I watched it. Now, I didn't realize this, how much studio interference there was. And the original, much like Spawn, much like the 1997 Spawn, the original concept and the original cut was so much more darker and thought-provoking, and it was the same apparently with City of Angels, and so much was cut out. But I also like the idea that they went onto a forum back in the day, the filmmakers, the director, and the producers, the writers, and they asked Crow fans on a forum, on a message board back in the day, what do you guys want to see? And everyone's like, no Eric Draven. That has to stand on its own. We need a completely new character now. And I really respect that. So yeah, I'd highly recommend checking out the Good Bad Flicks deep dive into it, because you're right, man. It is overhated, underappreciated, and yeah, it's misunderstood, 100%. Wally West, 4274. I'm way too narcissistic to feel guilty about anything. Good on you, man. But I genuinely love Sucker Punch. Since Zack Snyder was just on, I'll pick that. I haven't seen Sucker Punch. So yeah, I remember when it was coming out and they had the billboards plastered across Sydney. I was like, ooh, this looks intriguing for obvious reasons. But again, also, it's as soon as Zack Snyder's name's put out there, everyone's automatically just like, it's gonna be shit. And yes, I know, I found enjoyment in Rebel Moon Part 2. Fucking deal with it. It's called having an opinion. Again, guys, I'm not telling you how to feel. I'm just telling you how I feel. And you hurt my feelings by rejecting them and rejecting my opinion. Who gives a fuck? Yeah, Sucker Punch, man. Cool. I still need to check that one out. But if you're way too narcissistic to feel guilty about anything, fuck yeah, write it. Sci-Fi Production 7374 says, hands down, Pirates of the Caribbean Curse of the Black Pearl. Every time I watch the scene where Jack Sparrow first appears and he's a pirate theme starts building out, I get goosebumps. Never gets old for me. I agree, man. I love that shot of him coming down on the crow's nest and just very gracefully steps onto the wharf. I'm like, that is one of the best character introductions in film history. Like, one of. Like, we've got a shitload of great character introductions like Darth Vader, Freddy Krueger, Jason. Like, Jack Sparrow is definitely up there. And Johnny Depp definitely made those films. And like we spoke about, I think in the last video, with unpopular opinions and all that, if it's not him in the next film, there's no real point. You're missing that vital ingredient. Okay, here's a good one. Buckle the fuck up. Skytrend FG, Madam Web. In my opinion, it was so bad it's good. My brother and I had a good time watching it and laughing at all the absurd moments, especially Ezekiel's ADR, I agree, and the spider people. But it also had some elements that I actually liked. For example, the scene where Ezekiel first appears with his suit on in the ceiling, that was kind of cool. And in my opinion, this movie is way overhated. Also, why doesn't Cassie know how to open a soda can throughout a movie? And why do the three girls randomly start dancing on a table? These are the questions we will never know, man. In regards to the ADR, it was a weird one with his character. I'm like, is that his real voice? Is that his real accent? Is that even him? Like, is it someone else they got in to do the ADR? Because I've heard him talk in real life, and he just sounds like a guy. It sounds normal. I'm like, what the fuck happened? In terms of the spider people, I actually didn't mind the design of the spider people. And I said in my review, I would like to see a whole film dedicated to that, but like Apocalypto style, like Mel Gibson's Apocalypto. But it definitely is in the category of so bad it's good. But then like you've got Samurai Cop that is so incoherent from a filmmaking standpoint, like it was just so stupidly done, but it's so awesome at the same time. With Madam Web, I think because they had it all at their fingertips with the technology, how far technology's come with making things look good, making things look schmick, and also you had a good story there. Not the film itself, but the concept of Cassie Webb, Cassandra Webb. It's an interesting story. It's an intriguing one. So it could have been oh so good, but now it's fallen into the so bad it's good territory. My good friend Adam Kota, the art of Adam Kota, said, Son of the Mask. It's the perfect laugh. It is. It definitely makes you laugh. Makes me laugh, but not in the way I thought it would. And I feel really sorry for Jamie Kennedy with that film. You should actually go to his YouTube channel. He's got like a 3-part documentary video series on his experience filming Son of the Mask, because they filmed it here in Sydney and it was a big deal. And we're like, holy shit, a sequel to The Mask. This is awesome. Jim Carrey didn't want to return. But then there's that awful dance and rap sequence when he comes into the club and Jamie Kennedy looks like nightmare fuel with that makeup on. But it does have that goofy, so bad it's good element to it. Pip7967 says Shrek 1 and 2. In my opinion, man, I wouldn't really call them guilty pleasures per se. Again, there's no real like right or wrong with this, but they're definitely up there. I rate Shrek 2 over Shrek 1 actually. I've actually heard a lot of people say that in my travels when, for some reason, we start talking about Shrek, as you do. I definitely prefer Shrek 1 over Shrek 2. But I remember when the first one came out, I had the bootleg version of it too. Remember VCDs? When you had CD 1 and CD 2? I had Shrek 1 and I just played the shit out of that. But looking back, there are so many dirty adult jokes in the first one that just went over my head as a kid. And I watch it now, I'm like, holy shit, they got away with that. Do you think he's compensating for something? Skull6832 says Saw 1, my childhood movie. I agree, man. I remember when I was in high school and watched it for the first time, scared the shit out of me. But like, it's a solid film, man. It's a solid starting point for what became a very all over the place franchise. And I really like Saw X, Saw 10. I thought it was great. I thought it was a good return to form, a lot more intimate, and it goes back to the roots of the first one, being a lot more intimate, taking place in a very intimate setting. And the last one comes from Brandon Collins 5012, A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. It's super goofy and the final fight gets me hyped. Elm Street 4 is interesting, man. There are a lot of interesting elements in that film. Like, they apparently were influenced by Hong Kong cinema with all the fast cuts, the fighting, and that's where we see those elements kind of come together in the final fight between Freddy and Alice in that church. And I love it. It is very quick cut, kind of kung fu type thing. But this is definitely the MTV Freddy. This is like peak Freddy before things started to go downhill with the Dream Child. Freddy's dead. And again, Rennie Harlan, who directed the film, said, I wanted Freddy to become James Bond, or wanted him to be like James Bond, just the hero. You're actually rooting for Freddy now as opposed to the teenagers. He's cool. He's hip. And there you have it, guys. Those were some of your guilty pleasure films. I'm sorry I couldn't get through all of them. I had a shitload of them, so thank you so much for submitting them. Again, there will always be another round 2, 3, 4, 5, so I'm going to continue this series as well as the unpopular opinion series. I love just seeing what you guys have to say as well. It's nice to get you guys involved. So thanks once again for watching, guys. Love you guts, and I'll catch you in the next one.